On Friday, November 5th, 2024, my son-in-law Raymond Patterson took $800 from my hand and told me, "This should be the last time we need to discuss this arrangement." I'm Bessie Joy Thompson. I'm 67 years old. I said, "Yes, Raymond, I understand." Then I decided to find out why my daughter's voice sounded different on the phone last Tuesday. But let me start from the beginning, because what happened over the next 9 days would unravel 4 years of carefully constructed lies and reveal that the daughter I'd buried in March of 2020 had never died at all. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. This story isn't just mine anymore. It belongs to every mother who's ever been told to stop asking questions. The stairwell at 1305 Eastern Avenue smelled like old wood and someone's dinner, cabbage, maybe collard greens. I counted each step as I climbed. 1, 2, 3. By step 34, my knees were reminding me I wasn't 40 anymore. By step 56, I was breathing hard enough that I had to pause on the landing between the 3rd and 4th floors. 68 steps total. I'd counted them every month for 48 months straight. This was the 49th time. The envelope in my jacket pocket contained 8 $100 bills. I'd withdrawn them from First National Bank that morning, just like I always did on the first Friday of every month. The teller, a young black woman named Shanice, who I'd watched grow up in this neighborhood, had given me that look again, the one that said she wanted to ask why a 67-year-old retired electrician was withdrawing $800 in cash every single month. But Shanice was too polite to ask, and I was too tired to explain. The truth was simple and terrible. I was paying off my daughter's debt. The debt she'd left behind when she died 4 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia, on March 15th, 2020. The debt that would have destroyed my granddaughter Aaliyah's future if I didn't pay. At least that's what Raymond had told me. I reached apartment 405 and knocked 3 times. Sharp, deliberate, the way I always did. Through the door, I could hear the television, some cartoon with high-pitched voices and explosion sounds. Aaliyah was home from school then. My granddaughter, 8 years old now. I hadn't seen her in 3 weeks. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened 6 inches, stopped by the security chain. Raymond's face appeared in the gap. He was 40 years old, but he'd aged badly in the past 4 years. His hairline had receded. His face had gotten thinner, sharper. He wore a gray hoodie and jeans, and his eyes, dark brown, almost black in the dim hallway light, didn't quite meet mine. "Ms. Bessie," he said. Not Mom, not even Bessie. Always Ms. Bessie, like I was some kind of landlord collecting rent. "Raymond?" I pulled the envelope from my pocket and held it up. 49th payment. He didn't open the door wider. Instead, his hand shot through the gap, fingers extended. I placed the envelope in his palm. His fingers closed around it immediately, and he pulled it back through the crack. I heard the rustle of paper as he checked inside, not counting exactly, just confirming the amount was right. "Is Aaliyah home?" I asked, leaning slightly to try to see past him. "I thought maybe I could say hello. It's been—" "She's doing homework." His voice was flat. "Can't be disturbed." But I could still hear the cartoon. SpongeBob SquarePants, I thought. Aaliyah's favorite. "Raymond, it's 5:30 in the evening, on a Friday. I just want to see my granddaughter for 5 minutes. Ms. Bessie." He cut me off, his tone sharpening. "I appreciate you keeping up with the payments. I really do. But Aaliyah needs stability right now. Routine. Your visits? They upset her. They remind her too much of—" He paused. "Of her mother." Something in his voice made my chest tighten. Not grief, not pain. Something else. Something that sounded almost like irritation. "This should be the last time we need to discuss this arrangement," Raymond continued. "1 more month, 50 payments total, $40,000. Then we're done. Debt's paid. Aaliyah's future is secure. You can move on with your life." "I don't want to move on from my granddaughter," I said quietly. That's not what I meant, but his eyes still wouldn't meet mine. "Look, I've got to go. Aaliyah's waiting. Thank you for the payment." The door started to close. "Raymond, wait." The door shut. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy metallic thunk that echoed in the narrow hallway. I stood there for a moment, staring at the peeling paint on apartment 405's door. Behind it, I could hear Raymond's footsteps moving away. The cartoon continued playing. And then, faint but unmistakable, I heard another voice. A man's voice. Deep, casual, saying something I couldn't quite make out. I froze. Raymond lived alone with Aaliyah. That's what he'd always told me. A single father raising his daughter after his wife died. No girlfriend, no roommate, just him and Aaliyah struggling to get by, which was why my $800 a month mattered so much. But there was a man in that apartment right now. I pressed my ear closer to the door, holding my breath. "Don't worry about it," the voice said. Male, definitely male. "She's not going to—" Footsteps approached the door. I jerked back just as the peephole darkened. Someone checking to see if I was still there. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding harder than it had during the climb up 68 steps. The walk back to my own apartment, number 1247, just 2 blocks south on Eastern Avenue, felt longer than usual. The November air was cold enough to see my breath, and the streetlights were just starting to flicker on as the sun set behind the row houses. I let myself into my apartment and locked the door behind me. The space was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, but it had been home for 43 years. James and I had moved in when we got married in 1981. We'd raised Deandra here. We'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases here. We'd built a life here. And then, in the space of 6 months in 2020, I'd lost both of them. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, the one Deandra had made in a middle school art class, painted bright yellow with crooked daisies, and sank into my recliner. The springs groaned under my weight, a familiar sound I'd been hearing for 20 years. On the side table, next to a half-empty glass of water I'd left that morning, sat a photograph in a simple black frame. Deandra, my daughter, 34 years old in the photo, taken at Aaliyah's 4th birthday party. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her natural hair pulled up in a high bun, wearing a purple sweater I'd given her for Christmas. Behind her, Aaliyah was covered in chocolate cake, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. That was August 2019, 7 months before everything fell apart. I picked up the frame and traced my finger across the glass, following the curve of Deandra's smile. "Baby girl," I whispered to the empty room. "I paid again today. 1 more month. Then maybe Raymond will let me be a real grandmother to Aaliyah again." The photograph didn't answer. It never did. But as I sat there in the growing darkness of my living room, I couldn't stop thinking about that voice I'd heard in Raymond's apartment. That man's voice. Deep and comfortable, like someone who belonged there. Who was he? And why had Raymond never mentioned him? I hadn't always been this woman, the one who accepted being shut out of her granddaughter's life, who handed over $800 every month without demanding receipts or explanations. I used to be different. Stronger, but grief changes you. Let me tell you what happened 4 years ago, in March of 2020, because you need to understand how I got here. Standing outside my son-in-law's door like a beggar, grateful for scraps of time with my own blood. March 15th, 2020, a Sunday. James and I were watching the news, something about a virus starting to spread, people wearing masks in other countries, when someone knocked on our door. 3 sharp raps, official sounding. I answered it. A white man in his 50s stood in the hallway, wearing a charcoal suit that looked expensive but didn't quite fit right across the shoulders. He carried a black leather briefcase and wore gold-rimmed glasses that caught the hallway light. "Mrs. Thompson?" he asked. "Mrs. Bessie Joy Thompson?" "Yes." "My name is Harold Simmons. I'm with Georgia Transportation Services. May I come in? I'm afraid I have some very difficult news." Those words, difficult news, they hit you like a fist to the stomach. You know instantly that your life is about to break in half. There's the world before the difficult news, and the world after, and you can never go back. James came to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. "What news?" His voice was steady, but I could feel his hand shaking. Mr. Simmons looked down at his briefcase. "Perhaps we should sit down." We led him to the living room. He sat in the chair where I'm sitting right now, and James and I sat together on the couch, still holding hands. "There was an accident," Mr. Simmons said, "on Interstate 85, just south of Atlanta, March 13th, approximately 11:40 p.m. A multi-vehicle collision involving a tractor-trailer and 4 passenger vehicles." The room started to spin. I gripped James's hand harder. "Your daughter, Deandra Marie Thompson." He pulled papers from his briefcase. "She was driving home from a work conference. Her vehicle was struck by the trailer when it jackknifed. The impact was..." I'm very sorry to tell you this. She died at the scene. The sound that came out of me wasn't a scream. It was something deeper, something that started in my bones and tore its way up through my chest. James pulled me against him, and I felt his whole body shaking. No, I said. No, that's not. We just talked to her yesterday. She called. She was fine. She said she'd be home Tuesday. I'm very sorry, Mr. Simmons repeated. He pushed papers across the coffee table toward us. This is the medical examiner's report, the death certificate, and information about— He cleared his throat. About claiming her remains. I couldn't look at the papers, couldn't process the words. Death certificate, remains. Those words didn't belong to my daughter. James somehow kept it together enough to ask the practical questions. Where was her body? What about her belongings? Her car? Was there anyone else involved? Mr. Simmons answered each question patiently, pulling more documents from that terrible briefcase. Yes, her body was at the medical examiner's office in Fulton County. Her belongings had been sent to her residence. She'd been living with Raymond and Aaliyah in Baltimore. The other driver had survived. The crash was ruled an accident. Bad weather, poor visibility. What about her husband? I finally managed to ask. Raymond? Does he know? Mr. Patterson was notified yesterday evening, Mr. Simmons said. He's the one who provided us with your contact information. He asked me to come in person rather than calling. He thought that would be more respectful. Something about that detail stuck with me even then, through the fog of shock and grief. Raymond had asked this stranger to tell us our daughter was dead. He hadn't come himself, hadn't called, had sent Mr. Simmons, but I was too destroyed to question it, too broken to ask why. Mr. Simmons stayed for another 20 minutes, going over paperwork, explaining next steps. At some point he mentioned cremation had already been arranged, at Mr. Patterson's request, given the extent of the injuries, and that the urn would be delivered to us within the week. Then he left, and James and I sat in our living room, holding each other, crying in the growing darkness. My only child was gone. The next 6 months are a blur of gray. I remember James stopped sleeping. He'd wake up at 3 in the morning, and I'd find him at the kitchen table, staring at photos of Deandra as a baby. He lost weight. His hands started shaking. He forgot things, appointments, medications, whether he'd eaten lunch. It's just grief, our doctor said. Give him time. But time didn't help. Time made it worse. James had a heart condition, nothing serious, controlled with medication, but grief is a physical thing. It takes up space in your chest. It presses on your heart until something breaks. On September 18, 2020, 6 months and 3 days after Mr. Simmons knocked on our door, I came home from the grocery store and found James on the kitchen floor. Heart attack. Massive. He was already gone by the time the ambulance arrived. The doctors wrote myocardial infarction on the death certificate, but I knew the truth. James died of a broken heart. He died because losing Deandra had crushed something vital inside him, something that medication and time couldn't fix. I buried my husband next to the plot where we'd buried Deandra's urn 2 weeks earlier, at Oakwood Cemetery on the east side of Baltimore. At 63 years old, I'd lost my daughter and my husband in the space of 6 months. I had nothing left but grief. That's when Raymond came to see me. It was 2 weeks after James's funeral. October 3rd, 2020. I remember the date because it was a Saturday, and I was sitting in this same chair, staring at nothing, when he knocked. Raymond stood in my doorway, holding Aaliyah's hand. She was 4 years old, wearing a pink jacket with a hood, clutching a stuffed rabbit I'd given her for her 3rd birthday. "Miss Bessie," Raymond Sassy said. His voice was soft, careful. "Can we talk?" I let them in. Aaliyah ran to me immediately, climbing into my lap, and I held her tight, the last piece of Deandra I had left. She smelled like baby shampoo and crayons. Raymond sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. "About money." My stomach dropped. Of course this was about money. What else did I have to offer anymore? "Deandra had debt," Raymond continued. "A lot of debt. Before she died, she'd borrowed money to try to start a business. A nail salon. It was her dream, you know? She'd been planning it for years." I nodded numbly. Deandra had talked about opening a salon. She'd worked as an accountant, but had always wanted something of her own. She borrowed $40,000, Raymond said, from private lenders. Not banks. Banks wouldn't give her a loan. These were other people. And now they're calling. Every day, demanding payment. They say if I don't pay, they'll... He glanced at Aaliyah, then lowered his voice. They'll hurt us. Me and Aaliyah. $40,000. The number sat in the air like smoke. I'm working, Raymond said quickly. I'm a warehouse supervisor at a logistics company. I make $52,000 a year, but after rent and utilities and food and Aaliyah's preschool, I can barely save anything. These people want their money now. They gave me 50 months, $800 a month, 50 payments. He pulled out papers, photocopied statements, names and numbers I couldn't focus on, and spread them across the coffee table. I wouldn't ask, he said, and his voice cracked. I swear, Miss Bessie, I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. But these people know where we live. They've called my job. They've sent messages. If I don't pay... He looked at Aaliyah again. I can't let them hurt her. She's all I have left of Deandra. I looked down at Aaliyah in my lap. She was playing with her stuffed rabbit, making it hop across my arm, oblivious to the conversation happening above her head. All I had left of Deandra. How much do you need? I heard myself ask. $800 a month for 50 months, starting now. By the time she's 9, the debt will be paid. She'll be safe. $40,000 total, more money than I'd ever had at once. But between James's life insurance, our savings, and the monthly Social Security and pension payments I'd start receiving, I could do it. If I was careful. If I didn't spend money on anything else. If I kept working odd electrical jobs around the neighborhood. If I sacrificed everything, I could keep my granddaughter safe. Okay, Day said. Raymond's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. God, Miss Bessie, thank you. I promise once this is paid off, Aaliyah and I will make it up to you. We'll just keep her safe, I said. That's all I want. So that's how it started. October 2020, $800, first Friday of every month, payment 1 of 50. And Raymond kept his word at first. For the first few months, I saw Aaliyah every week. We'd go to the park, get ice cream. I'd read to her. She'd tell me about preschool. But gradually, over the next year, the visits got shorter, then less frequent. Raymond always had a reason. Aaliyah was sick. Aaliyah had a play date. Aaliyah needed routine. The visits were confusing her. By year 2, I was lucky to see her once a month. By year 3, it was every few months. And now, year 4, it had been 3 weeks since I'd laid eyes on my granddaughter. But I kept paying. $800 first Friday every single month. Because what else could I do? Saturday morning, November 6, 2024, the day after payment 49, I was replacing a porch light for Mrs. Patterson at 1521 Eastern Avenue. No relation to Raymond, just an unfortunate coincidence of last names, when Ruby Mitchell approached me. Ruby lived on the second floor of Raymond's building, right below apartment 405. She was 45 years old, white, with graying blonde hair she usually wore in a bun. She'd been a teacher at PS 87 for 20 years before taking early retirement last spring. I knew Ruby the way you know neighbors in Baltimore row houses, polite nods in the hallway, small talk at the corner store, Christmas cards exchanged but never personal conversations. Which is why it was strange when she grabbed my arm as I was packing up my tools. Miss Bessie, she said quietly, glancing around the empty street. I need to talk to you. About Raymond. My hand stilled on my toolbox. What about Raymond? Can we... She gestured toward her car, parked at the curb. Somewhere private? We sat in her Honda Civic, windows cracked despite the November chill. Ruby twisted her hands in her lap, not looking at me. I don't know if I should tell you this. It's not really my business, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Tell me what? She took a breath. Last night, Friday night, around 2 a.m, I couldn't sleep. Insomnia, it's been bad lately, so I went out on my fire escape to have some air, and I saw someone come up the stairs to the 4th floor. A man? Yes. He was... She paused. He moved strange, like he was injured. His left leg kind of dragged, and his left shoulder dipped down when he walked, like he was favoring that side. My throat went dry. Lots of people have limps. I know, but Miss Bessie... Ruby finally looked at me, and her eyes were intense, certain. "I was a teacher for 20 years. I taught your daughter, Deandra Thompson. She was in my 5th grade class back in 2001. I remember her." The car suddenly felt too small, too hot. "I remember," Ruby continued, "that Deandra was in a motorcycle accident. Junior year of high school, I think. She broke her leg badly. After that, she always walked with a limp. Left leg dragged a little. Left shoulder dropped. I couldn't breathe." "This man last night," Ruby said. "He walked exactly like Deandra used to walk." I tried to find words. "That's impossible. My daughter died 4 years ago. We buried her. I have the death certificate." "I know. That's what I keep telling myself. But Ms. Bessie, I watched this man climb those stairs. I watched him pull out a key. Not knock, not wait, but pull out his own key and unlock Raymond's door. Like he lived there." My hands were shaking. I pressed them against my knees to keep them still. "There's something else," Ruby said. "The building put in a security camera last month. After those break-ins, remember? They installed it on the landing between the 3rd and 4th floors. It records everything. The footage is saved for at least 90 days. A security camera, recording everyone who went up to Raymond's floor." "I think you should look at that footage," Ruby said. "I think you should see who's been going into that apartment. Because, Ms. Bessie, I'm telling you, that walk, I'd recognize it anywhere." She gave me the name of the security company, the phone number to call. Then she squeezed my hand and got out of the car, heading back into the building. I sat alone in the Honda for 10 more minutes, staring at the piece of paper with the security company's information. This was crazy. Deandra was dead. I'd been to her memorial service. I had her urn in my living room. But Ruby's words kept echoing. I'd recognize that walk anywhere. And I remembered, God help me, I remembered, the voice I'd heard in Raymond's apartment last night. The man's voice. Deep, comfortable, like he belonged there. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in over a year. "Dorothy," I said when she answered. "It's Bessie. I need your help." Dorothy Williams had been my best friend for 42 years. We'd met in 1982 at Greater Grace Baptist Church, both of us young mothers trying to figure out how to raise daughters in East Baltimore. She'd been a nurse at Johns Hopkins Hospital for 35 years before retiring in 2018. Her husband, Joseph, had passed away from cancer in 2019. She understood loss. She understood grief. And more importantly, she understood when something didn't feel right. 20 minutes after I called her, Dorothy was sitting in my living room, her reading glasses perched on her nose, looking at the paper Ruby had given me. "A security camera," she said. "That captures everyone going up to the 4th floor. Ruby said she saw someone Friday night, 2 in the morning. Someone who walked like—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Dorothy reached across and took my hand. "Like Deandra." I nodded. "Bessie," Dorothy said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about the answer. When Deandra died, did you ever see her body?" The question hit me like cold water. "What? No. Mr. Simmons said the injuries were too severe. That's why they cremated her immediately. Raymond made the decision. Did you talk to the medical examiner, the police, anyone official besides Mr. Simmons?" I thought back to those awful days in March 2020. Everything had been such a blur. "No, Raymond handled everything. He said he didn't want me and James to have to deal with it. He was protecting us." Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I think we need to call William." William Hayes, James's best friend from the police academy, back before James decided to become an electrician instead of a cop. William had stayed with the Baltimore Police Department for 30 years, retiring as a detective in 2019. He'd been at James's funeral. He'd checked on me a few times after, but I'd been so buried in grief that I'd stopped returning his calls. "I haven't talked to William in over a year," I said. "He'd want to help." Dorothy pulled out her phone. "James was his brother. If there's even a chance something's wrong here, William needs to know." She was right. I knew she was right. Dorothy made the call. 15 minutes later, William was on his way. William Hayes arrived at 6:30 that evening. He was 64 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair cut military short and deep brown eyes that had seen 30 years of Baltimore's worst crimes. He wore jeans and a navy blue windbreaker, and when he hugged me at the door, I smelled Old Spice cologne. the same scent James used to wear. "Bessie," he said quietly, "I'm sorry I haven't come by more. I should have—" "Don't," I pulled back. "Just help me figure out what's happening." We sat at my kitchen table, me, Dorothy, and William, and I told him everything. The 49 payments, Ruby's observation, the voice I'd heard in Raymond's apartment, the way Raymond kept me away from Aaliyah. William listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes in a small spiral notebook he'd pulled from his jacket pocket. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you still have the paperwork Mr. Simmons gave you? The death certificate? The cremation records?" I did. I kept everything in a filing cabinet in my bedroom, a habit from 40 years of doing the bookkeeping for James's electrical business. I brought the folder to the table. William went through each document slowly, his expression growing darker with each page. "This death certificate," he said finally. "It lists the issuing authority as Fulton County, Georgia, Medical Examiner's Office. Certificate number GEO-2020-04782. Is that wrong?" I asked. "Let me check." He pulled out his phone and made a call. I heard him identify himself as a retired Baltimore detective and give someone the certificate number. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. When he hung up, his jaw was tight. "That certificate number doesn't exist in the Georgia State database," he said. "Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office has no record of a Deandra Marie Thompson dying in March 2020. The room tilted. Dorothy grabbed my arm to steady me. "The cremation authorization form," William continued, picking up another document. "It lists the funeral home as Peaceful Rest Memorial Services, 847 Cascade Avenue, Atlanta. I'm going to call them right now." He did. This time the call was shorter. "That address doesn't exist," William said. "There's no funeral home by that name registered in Georgia." "So it's all fake?" Dorothy's voice was sharp. "The death certificate, the cremation, all of it?" "Looks that way." William's eyes met mine. "Bessie, I think we need to look at that security footage. Tonight." William had connections. By 8 o'clock that night, we were sitting in his car outside 1305 Eastern Avenue, his laptop balanced on the dashboard. He'd called in a favor from someone at Secure Watch Systems, the company that installed the building's cameras, and they'd sent him digital access to the past 60 days of footage. "What date do you want to start with?" William asked. "November 5th, I said, Friday night, 2 in the morning. He typed commands into the laptop. A grainy black and white video appeared on the screen, timestamp glowing in the corner. November 5th, 2024, 2:03:17 a.m. The camera showed the landing between the 3rd and 4th floors. The stairs were visible on the left side of the frame. Raymond's door, apartment 405, was barely visible on the right edge. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Just an empty stairwell, fluorescent light buzzing. Then, at 2:03:41, a shadow appeared at the bottom of the frame. Someone was climbing the stairs. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The figure emerged into clearer view. Average height, maybe 5'8". Wearing dark jeans, a black jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low. A cloth face mask covered the lower half of their face, the kind people had worn during COVID. But it was the walk that made my breath catch. The right foot moved normally, heel to toe, smooth and even. The left foot dragged. Not much, just a slight hitch, like the leg wasn't quite lifting all the way. And when the person's weight shifted to the left side, their whole body compensated. The left shoulder dropped a fraction of an inch. The torso tilted just slightly. I'd watched Deandra walk that exact way for 15 years, ever since the motorcycle accident in 2006 when she was 17. She'd broken her left femur in 3 places and damaged the hip joint. The doctors had done what they could, pins, physical therapy, painkillers, but she'd never walked quite right again. That hitch in her stride, that dropped shoulder, I'd know it anywhere. "Oh my God," I whispered. On the screen, the figure reached Raymond's door at 2:04:03. They didn't knock, didn't hesitate. Their right hand went straight to their jacket pocket and pulled out a key ring. They selected a key with practiced ease, unlocked the door, stepped inside. The door closed behind them. Timestamp 2 hours, 4 minutes, 11 seconds. 8 seconds from stairs to inside, like they lived there. "Run it again," William said quietly. We watched it 3 more times. Each time the same details jumped out. The uneven gait, the dropped shoulder, the key that fit perfectly. the complete familiarity with entering that apartment. Check October 5th, I heard myself say, the night after my October payment. William pulled up October 5th, 2024. Same time, 2:13 a.m. Same figure, same walk, same key, same door. September 5th, 2024, 1:52 a.m. Same person. August 5th, 2024, 2:04 a.m. Same, a pattern, crystal clear. The night after I made each payment, this person showed up at Raymond's apartment in the middle of the night and let themselves in with their own key. How far back does this footage go? I asked. 60 days, William said. The system was installed September 15th. So we had September and October. 2 months, 2 payments, 2 visits. Bessie, Dorothy said carefully, that walk, do you think? That's my daughter. My voice didn't sound like my own. That's Deandra. We drove back to my apartment in silence. When we got inside, I turned on every light, something I never did, worried about the electric bill. But I needed brightness, needed to see clearly. William stood in my living room, looking at the shelf above my television. The urn. It was brushed bronze, 10 inches tall, with engraved flowers around the rim. I'd chosen it from a catalog Mr. Simmons had given me. It had cost $347. For 4 years, that urn had sat on my shelf. I dusted it every week, talked to it every night, told Deandra about Aaliyah, about my day, about how much I missed her. We need to open it, William said. No, the word came out sharp. That's my daughter. I can't. Bessie. Dorothy came to stand beside me, taking my hand. If Deandra's alive, if she's being held somewhere, if Raymond's been lying to you for 4 years, we need to know. We need proof. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't make them stop. I'll do it, William said gently. You don't have to touch it. Just tell me it's okay. I looked at the urn, at the shelf where it had sat for 1,460 days. Okay, I whispered. William put on latex gloves. He still carried them, even retired, and carefully lifted the urn down. He set it on my coffee table. Dorothy sat beside me on the couch, her arm around my shoulders. William examined the seal. It's secured with silicone, standard for urns. I'll need to pry the lid off carefully. He worked slowly, using a flathead screwdriver to break the seal bit by bit. It took 5 minutes. 5 minutes of silence broken only by the soft pop of silicone giving way. Finally, the lid came free. William set it aside and looked inside the urn. His face changed. Went very still. What? I couldn't breathe. What is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached inside and carefully lifted out a clear plastic bag. It was tied at the top with a twist tie, filled with fine gray powder. William opened the bag, dipped his gloved finger into the powder, and rubbed it between his thumb and forefinger. Then he brought it to his nose and sniffed. This is wood ash, he said flatly, from a fireplace or wood stove. What? He reached back into the urn and pulled out 5 smooth stones. River rocks, the kind you could buy at any garden center, each one about the size of a golf ball. These are here for weight, he said, to make the urn feel like it contained something. The room was spinning. I couldn't get enough air. Bessie. William's voice seemed to come from very far away. There are no human remains in this urn. This is wood ash and landscaping rocks. Dorothy made a sound, half gasp, half sob, and pulled me tighter against her. She's alive, I said. The words came out strange, distant. Deandra's alive. We don't know that for certain yet, William started. Yes, we do, my voice cracked. The security footage, the walk, and now this, I pointed at the plastic bag of wood ash. Raymond gave me wood ash. He let James cry himself to sleep next to a box of fireplace ashes. He let my husband die thinking our daughter was dead, and she's been alive the whole time. Dorothy was crying now, still holding me. William carefully placed everything back in the urn. His hands were steady, but his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. We need to find her, he said. We need to figure out where Raymond's keeping her, and why. Sunday morning, November 7th. I hadn't slept. None of us had. William had stayed on my couch. Dorothy had taken my spare bedroom. At 6 a.m., we were all sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee, making a plan. "We need to understand the financial picture," William said. "You've paid Raymond $39,200 over 49 months. Where's that money going?" "He said it was for loan sharks," I said. $40,000 total to pay off Deandra's debt. "But if Deandra's alive and being hidden, that debt story is probably fake too." William pulled out his laptop. "I need to look at Raymond's financials, bank accounts, credit cards, property records. It'll take me a day or two. I've got to call in some favors, but I can get it done." "Is that legal?" I asked. "It's a gray area," William admitted, "but we're not using it in court. We're just following the money to find Deandra." By Monday evening, William had preliminary results. We met again at my apartment. He spread printouts across my kitchen table. "Raymond Patterson," he read, "age 40, works as a warehouse supervisor at Baytech Logistics in Canton. Annual salary, $51,700. Single checking account at M&T Bank." He showed me the statements. I squinted at the numbers. "His monthly expenses," William continued. "Rent on the apartment, $1,400. Utilities average $150. Groceries and basics maybe $400. That's $1,950 per month minimum, not counting anything for Aaliyah. School, clothes, activities. Let's say total monthly expenses are around $3,000. So where does my $800 a month fit?" I asked. "That's the thing." William pointed to another section of the printout. "Every month, like clockwork, Raymond receives a direct deposit of $2,500. It comes from an LLC called Coastal Holdings Group, registered in Delaware." $2,500 a month? Dorothy leaned closer. "That's $30,000 a year on top of his salary." "Exactly. So your $800? He doesn't need it. Not for basic living expenses." My stomach turned. "Then what's he using my money for?" William pulled out another document. "I traced Coastal Holdings Group. It's a shell company. No employees, no office. The registered agent is—" He paused. "A lawyer named Vanessa Rodriguez, age 35, practices real estate and offshore banking law in Richmond, Virginia." "Who is she?" I asked. "I don't know yet, but she's the connection. She set up the LLC that's been paying Raymond, and I'm betting she knows exactly where Deandra is." Wednesday, November 10th. William had been following Raymond for 3 days. He called me at 4:30 in the afternoon. "Bessie, I need you to do something for me. Can you take Aaliyah out? Pick her up from school, keep her busy for a few hours?" "Raymond won't let me." "Call him. Tell him you want to take Aaliyah to dinner in the park. Use the grandparent card. Be sweet. He won't refuse." I made the call. Raymond was suspicious at first, but I laid it on thick. Talked about wanting to make memories while I still could. How I was getting older. How I'd pay for everything. Finally, he agreed. At 3:15, I picked up Aaliyah from Roland Park Elementary School. She ran to me, backpack bouncing, and threw her arms around my waist. "Grandma Bessie!" "Hey, baby girl." I hugged her tight, breathing in the smell of her hair, strawberry shampoo and playground dust. "How about we get pizza and go to the park?" Her face lit up. "Really?" "Really." I took her to Joe Squared in Station North. We got pepperoni pizza and she told me about school, about her teacher, Ms. Anderson, about her best friend, Jasmine, about learning fractions. She was smart, my granddaughter, quick with numbers, just like her mother. "Grandma," she said, sucking cheese off her fingers, "do you think Mama can see me from heaven?" The question punched the air from my lungs. "Baby, your mama—" I had to stop, had to choose my words carefully. "Your mama loves you more than anything in this world. You understand that?" She nodded. "Daddy says she's watching over me. Is that true?" "Your mama would never stop watching over you," I said. And that at least was true. We were at Patterson Park, Aaliyah on the swings, when William texted me. "Got him. He's moving." While I kept Aaliyah busy, William had been watching Raymond's apartment. At 6:45 p.m., Raymond left the building, got into his truck, a blue Ford F-150, Maryland plates KXT 4891, and drove south on I-95. William followed him. By 7:30, Raymond was in Wilmington, Delaware, in the industrial port area. He pulled into a gravel lot in front of a 3-story red brick warehouse, 2847 Patapsco Street. The building was old, probably 70 or 80 years. Most of the windows were boarded up. Graffiti covered the lower walls. A single dim bulb hung over the entrance. William parked down the street and watched. Raymond got out of his truck carrying 2 large grocery bags. He approached the warehouse door and knocked 3 times. Loud, soft, loud. The door opened from inside, and William saw who opened it. A woman, medium height, thin, with shoulder-length black hair that needed washing. She wore sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. Even from a distance, even in the bad light, William could see the way she moved. The left leg that dragged slightly, the left shoulder that dipped. He took photos, zoomed in as much as his phone camera would allow. The woman, Deandra, it had to be Deandra, stepped aside to let Raymond in with the groceries. They spoke for a moment. Then Raymond handed her something small, looked like a phone or medication bottle, and left. The door closed, locked from the outside. William heard the deadbolt slide home. Raymond got back in his truck and drove away. William waited 5 minutes, then approached the warehouse. He found a broken window on the side of the building, about 6 feet off the ground. Carefully, quietly, he climbed up and looked inside. The warehouse was mostly empty, but in the light from a single camping lantern, he could see her, Deandra Thompson, sitting on a mattress on the floor, alive, trapped. William called me at 8:15. I was driving Aaliyah back to Raymond's apartment, and the sound of my phone made me jump. "I found her," William said. "Bessie, I found Deandra." I had to pull over, had to press my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound that would scare Aaliyah. "Where?" I whispered. "Wilmington, an old warehouse. Raymond's keeping her there. She's locked in. I couldn't make contact, didn't want to risk Raymond finding out we know, but I got photos. It's her." "Is she—" I couldn't finish. "She's alive, moving around, doesn't look injured, just trapped. My daughter had been locked in a warehouse for 4 years while I paid her captor $800 a month." "What do we do?" My voice shook. "We get her out, but we need to be smart. If Raymond suspects we know, he could move her. Or worse, we need a plan." After I dropped Aaliyah off, Raymond barely opened the door, just took her hand and closed it again. I drove straight to William's house. Dorothy was already there. We sat in William's kitchen and made a plan. "We can't go to the police yet," William said. "We have grainy security footage, fake documents, and my word about what I saw at the warehouse. That's not enough for a warrant. Plus, if we spook Raymond, Deandra could disappear." "So what do we do?" Dorothy asked. "We lure Raymond away from his apartment. Then I go to the warehouse and get Deandra out myself." "How do we lure him?" I asked. William looked at me. "You tell him you want to make the 50th payment early. Say you want to close this out. Meet him somewhere public, a coffee shop, while I'm breaking Deandra out." It was risky, dangerous, but it was all we had. "When?" I asked. "Sunday, November 14th. I need a few days to prepare, get backup ready." "Backup?" "I've got a friend, Thomas Lee, retired police, like me. He'll help extract Deandra while I handle the legal side. But Bessie," William's voice went serious, "once we do this, there's no going back. We'll be breaking into a warehouse, potentially confronting Raymond. This could get complicated." I thought about my daughter locked in that building, about Aaliyah growing up thinking her mother was dead, about James dying of grief over a lie. "I don't care about complicated," I said. "I want my daughter back." "Then Sunday it is. Sunday, November 14th, 2024, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I sat in Corner Brew Coffee Shop on Conkling Street, a white envelope on the table in front of me containing $1,200 bills. $1,200. The 50th payment, plus an extra $400 I'd told Raymond, was a thank you for taking care of Aaliyah all these years. The lie had tasted like ash in my mouth when I'd called him Friday to set this up. "Raymond, I'd like to settle early," I'd said, keeping my voice steady. "I've been having some chest pains. Doctor says my heart isn't good. I'd like to close this out while I still can." There had been a pause on his end. Then, "Miss Bessie, you don't have to. Please, let me do this. For my peace of mind." He'd agreed. Sunday, 4 p.m., Corner Brew, public place, witnesses everywhere. Now I sat by the window watching people walk by on the November afternoon, my phone in my lap, waiting for William's text that he and Thomas were in position at the warehouse. At 3:47, my phone buzzed. In position, ready when you are. My hands shook as I typed back, he's not here yet. At 3:52, Raymond walked through the door. He looked nervous. His eyes darted around the coffee shop. About 15 people scattered at tables, the barista behind the counter, soft jazz playing over the speakers, before landing on me. He slid into the chair across from me. Ms. Bessie. Raymond. I pushed the envelope across the table. $1,200. The debt is paid. He picked up the envelope, opened it, counted quickly. His fingers trembled slightly. Thank you, he said. This means Aaliyah's future is secure. You have no idea how much— I know my daughter is alive. The words dropped between us like stones into still water. Raymond's face went from nervous to white in the space of a heartbeat. What? I know Deandra isn't dead. I know you've been keeping her somewhere. I know the death certificate was fake. The urn you gave me? It's filled with wood ash and river rocks. His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. I leaned forward and I let him see the anger I'd been holding back for 4 years. You let my husband die thinking his daughter was dead. You took $39,200 from me while you kept my daughter locked up like an animal, and you used my granddaughter, my grandbaby, as leverage to keep me paying. I don't, Raymond stammered. You can't prove— I pulled out my phone and showed him the security footage. The figure with the familiar limp climbing the stairs at 2 a.m. The key, the easy entrance into his apartment. That's Deandra, I said. And right now my friend is getting her out of that warehouse on Patapsco Street in Wilmington. Raymond lunged to his feet, his chair scraping loudly. Every head in the coffee shop turned toward us. You can't. She's not. He grabbed for his phone. I stood up too. Sit down, Raymond, or I will scream for help right now and tell everyone in this coffee shop that you've been holding my daughter prisoner for 4 years. He froze, phone in his hand, eyes wild. Sit down. He sat. My phone buzzed. William, we have her. Deandra is safe. Police en route. I showed Raymond the text. His face crumpled. Ms. Bessie, please. You don't understand. I didn't have a choice. They were going to kill us. The loan sharks. They said they'd hurt Aaliyah. I had to fake Deandra's death. I had to hide her. It was the only way to keep her safe. Safe? My voice rose despite myself. You kept her locked in a warehouse for 4 years. You made her daughter grow up without a mother. You killed her father with grief. That's not safety, Raymond. That's cruelty. I was protecting her. You were making money off her. $2,500 a month from Coastal Holdings. My $800 a month. That's over $38,000 a year, Raymond. For 4 years. You weren't protecting anyone. You were profiting. He started to cry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. At first, it was just supposed to be 6 months. Just long enough to pay off the debt. But then Vanessa said we could make more. She said if we kept it going, we could— Vanessa Rodriguez, I said. Your partner, the lawyer who set up the LLC. His head snapped up. How do you— I know everything, Raymond. Behind him, through the coffee shop window, I saw a Baltimore Police Department cruiser pull up to the curb. That's for you, I said. 2 officers entered. One of them, a black woman in her 30s, badge reading Officer Johnson, approached our table. Raymond Patterson? He looked at her with desperate, defeated eyes. You're under arrest for kidnapping, fraud, and extortion. She pulled out handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. I watched them take him away, this man who'd taken 4 years of my daughter's life, 4 years of Aaliyah's childhood, the last years of James's life. And I felt nothing but cold, clear certainty that justice was finally here. By the time I got to Wilmington, Dorothy drove because I was shaking too badly to hold the wheel. Deandra was sitting in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket, being checked by paramedics. She looked so small, so thin. Her hair hung in tangled dark curls around her face. Her skin was pale, almost gray. She'd lost at least 30 pounds. But when she saw me, her face crumpled and she whispered, Mama. I ran. I don't remember crossing the parking lot. Don't remember pushing past the paramedics. I just remember my arms around my daughter, her body shaking against mine, both of us crying so hard we couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, she sobbed. Mama, I'm so sorry. I never wanted— I tried to tell you, I tried. Shh, baby, shh. You're safe now. You're safe. We held each other while police radios crackled around us, while William gave his statement to Delaware State Police, while the November wind whipped cold across the empty warehouse lot. My daughter, alive, finally home. Later that night at Wilmington Hospital, where they'd taken Deandra for observation, she told us everything. Dorothy, William, and I sat around her hospital bed while she spoke, her voice hoarse from disuse, her hands clutching mine like she was afraid I'd disappear. It started in 2019, Deandra said. Raymond had a gambling problem, sports betting. He lost more and more. By January 2020, he owed $87,000 to a loan shark named Derek Webb. Derek said if Raymond didn't pay by March, he'd kill me and Aaliyah. She paused, accepting a cup of water from the nurse. Raymond panicked. He told me about the debt. We didn't have that kind of money. The house was mortgaged. My 401k had maybe $12,000. We were desperate. That's when he met Vanessa? William asked. Deandra nodded. Vanessa Rodriguez. She's a lawyer, but she also facilitates things. Illegal things. Raymond met her through someone at work. She came up with the plan. Fake my death, collect the life insurance. I had a $50,000 policy through my job, and use that to pay Derek. Then I'd resurface with new identity papers, and we'd move somewhere far away. Start over. How did they fake your death? Dorothy asked gently. Vanessa had connections. Harold Simmons, he's a document forger. He made the fake death certificate, the cremation papers, everything. They staged the accident on paper only. No real crash, no real body, just paperwork. My throat was so tight I could barely breathe. And the urn? Wood ash from Raymond's fireplace. Rocks from the garden center. Vanessa said it had to feel real, had to have weight. Deandra's eyes filled with tears. Mama, I didn't know they'd make you bury it. I didn't know they'd... I'm so sorry about Daddy. When Raymond told me he died, She broke down completely. I held her until she could speak again. After we paid Derek, she continued, Raymond was supposed to let me come home. That was the agreement. 6 months in hiding, then new papers, new life. But he didn't. He said Vanessa had set up this LLC, Coastal Holdings, that was paying him $2,500 a month to consult. He said if we kept me dead, the money would keep coming. And then he approached you about the $40,000 debt, which was fake, I said flatly. I didn't know about that until months later, Deandra said quickly. Raymond didn't tell me he'd asked you for money. When I found out, I begged him to stop. But he said you'd already started paying. Said it would look suspicious if he suddenly said never mind. And then he said, her voice dropped. He said if I tried to escape or tell anyone, he'd claim I was in on the fraud. That I'd go to prison and lose Aaliyah. So you stayed, William said. I stayed. Deandra looked at me, her eyes hollow. Mama, I've been in that warehouse for 4 years. Raymond brings food every 2 weeks. Vanessa comes once a month to check on me. I have a phone, but it only receives calls, from Raymond and from Aaliyah. Once a month, Raymond lets me call Aaliyah for 5 minutes while he listens. I have to pretend I'm away on some long business trip. I have to act happy while my daughter tells me about school and friends and growing up without me. The cruelty of it, the calculated, systematic cruelty, made me want to scream. But I tried to leave clues, Deandra said. In the phone calls with Aaliyah, I'd tell her stories about princesses and adventures, and I'd hide codes in them, places, numbers, hoping maybe someday if someone listened carefully. Wait, William said sharply. What kind of codes? William retrieved the recordings. Raymond had been sending me audio files of the monthly calls between Deandra and Aaliyah. So you can hear her voice, he'd said, and know she's talking to her daughter about you. I'd saved them all. 48 recordings. 4 years of a mother talking to her daughter in 5-minute increments. We listened to them that night in the hospital. In the July 2024 call, Deandra told Aaliyah a story. Once upon a time, there was a princess named Willa who was trapped in a tower. She couldn't leave, but every night she would sing to the stars. And one day, a brave knight heard her song and followed it to the tower to save her. Willissington, William said slowly. Wilmington. In the September 2024 call, the tower had a special address. It was number 28 on 47 Patapsco Street. The princess remembered because those were her favorite numbers. 2847 Patapsco, Dorothy breathed. 2847 Patapsco Street. In the October 2024 call, the princess had been in the tower for 4 long years. She missed her family every single day, all 1,460 days. 4 years, 1,460 days. Every single call contained clues, hidden in stories, buried in casual conversation, pieces of a map leading back to her. "You brilliant girl," I whispered, looking at my daughter. "You've been telling us where you were the whole time." "I didn't know if anyone would ever listen carefully enough," Deandra said. "But I had to try. I couldn't just give up." February 18th, 2025. 3 months after the rescue, Baltimore Circuit Court was packed. I sat in the front row, Dorothy on one side, Deandra on the other. Aaliyah was with a counselor in another room. We'd decided she didn't need to see this. Raymond Patterson sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his lawyer beside him. 2 rows back sat Vanessa Rodriguez, also in orange, with her own legal team. And in the back, Harold Simmons, looking smaller and older than when he'd knocked on my door 4 years ago to tell me my daughter was dead. Judge Patricia Coleman, a black woman in her early 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, presided. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecutors, led by Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, presented everything: the security footage, the fake urn, the forged documents, the LLC financial records, William's testimony about finding Deandra, the recordings of her phone calls with the hidden messages. And on the 3rd day, Deandra took the stand. She wore a navy blue dress I'd bought her. Her hair was pulled back. She'd gained back 10 of the 30 pounds she'd lost, but she still looked fragile, breakable. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. "My name is Deandra Marie Thompson Patterson," she said. "I'm 38 years old. For 4 years, 1 month, and 30 days, I was held prisoner in a warehouse in Wilmington, Delaware." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "I lived in a 10 by 12 room. I had a mattress, 3 changes of clothes, and 27 books that Raymond brought me. I had no internet, no television, no calendar. I only knew what day it was when Raymond came with food." Ada Walsh approached. "Miss Patterson, during those 4 years, did you ever try to escape?" "Yes, 7 times. The windows were boarded from the outside. The door was locked with a deadbolt that only opened from the outside. The first time I tried to break a board, Raymond caught me. He said if I tried again, I'd never speak to my daughter again." "Did you ever see your daughter during this time?" "No," Deandra's voice cracked. "I talked to her once a month on the phone for 5 minutes. Raymond listened to every word. I had to pretend I was on a business trip. I had to lie to my 8-year-old daughter about why I'd been gone for 4 years." "What did you tell her?" "I told her Mommy was working far away but would come home soon. I told her Mommy loved her. I told her to be brave." Tears ran down Deandra's face. "And every time after Raymond hung up the phone, I'd lie on that mattress and cry until I couldn't breathe." Ada Walsh let that sit for a moment. "Then, Miss Patterson, why didn't you try to escape during the phone calls? Why didn't you scream for help?" "Because Raymond said if I did, he'd tell the police I was in on the fraud. That I'd helped fake my own death to collect insurance money. He said I'd go to prison and lose custody of Aaliyah. He said my daughter would grow up in foster care." Deandra looked directly at Raymond. "He used my love for my daughter as a weapon against me." The jury, 9 women, 3 men, stared at Raymond with expressions ranging from disgust to fury. "One final question," Ada Walsh said. "In all that time, did Raymond Patterson or Vanessa Rodriguez ever express remorse?" "No," Deandra said. "Vanessa told me I should be grateful. She said at least I was alive. Raymond said it was just business, that the money was too good to stop." The verdict came back in 90 minutes. Raymond Patterson, guilty on all counts: kidnapping, fraud, extortion, conspiracy. Vanessa Rodriguez, guilty on conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud. Harold Simmons, guilty on forgery and conspiracy. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Coleman looked at each defendant in turn, her expression hard as stone. "Mr. Patterson," she said, "you kidnapped your wife. You imprisoned her for 4 years. You extorted money from her elderly mother. You allowed your wife's father to die believing his daughter was dead. You robbed your daughter of her mother. Your crimes are among the most callous and calculated I've seen in 30 years on this bench. She sentenced Raymond to 25 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 15 years. Vanessa Rodriguez received 15 years. Harold Simmons received 8 years. The judge also ordered full restitution. Raymond and Vanessa had to pay back every dollar, $159,200 total, the combination of my payments and the LLC funds. When the bailiff led Raymond away, he looked back at Deandra one last time. "I'm sorry," he said. "Dee, I'm sorry. I never meant—" "You kept me in a cage for 4 years," Deandra said, her voice ice cold. "Sorry doesn't fix that." 6 months later, August 2025, I sat on the front porch of my apartment on Eastern Avenue, watching the sun set over Baltimore. The air was warm, humid, heavy with the smell of summer, cut grass and barbecue smoke and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle from Mrs. Patterson's garden next door. Inside, I could hear Deandra and Aaliyah laughing. They were making dinner together, spaghetti and meatballs, Aaliyah's favorite. Aaliyah's voice rang out. "Mama, you're doing it wrong. You have to stir it like this. Mama, not the lady who left or the person who abandoned me. Mama." It had taken months, therapy for both of them, Deandra for the PTSD and depression that came from 4 years of imprisonment, Aaliyah for the trauma of learning her mother had been alive all along. Family therapy for the 3 of us, learning how to be a family again. But slowly, day by day, we were healing. Deandra had moved back in with me. She was working part-time as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm, easing back into the workforce. Some days were hard. She still had nightmares, still flinched at sudden noises. But she was fighting, getting stronger. Aaliyah visited a child psychologist twice a week. She'd been angry at first, angry at Deandra for leaving, angry at Raymond for lying, angry at me for not finding Mama sooner. But slowly, with help, she was processing it all, understanding that none of it was her fault, that she was loved. The restitution money had come through, $159,200. I'd put $100,000 in a trust fund for Aaliyah's education, used $30,000 to pay off my mortgage, gave $20,000 to Deandra to help her rebuild her life, kept $9,200 for emergencies. Money couldn't buy back the 4 years we'd lost, but it could build a foundation for the future. Dorothy came by most evenings. William stopped in every Sunday. They'd become part of our family. Aunt Dorothy and Uncle William, Aaliyah called them now. The door opened behind me. Deandra came out carrying 2 glasses of sweet tea and sat down in the chair beside mine. "Aaliyah's setting the table," she said. "Dinner in 10 minutes. "Okay, baby." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the street. A group of kids played double dutch on the sidewalk. A man walked by with a grocery bag. Normal life. Beautiful, ordinary, normal life. "Mama?" Deandra said quietly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For never giving up. For paying those 49 months even when Raymond tried to keep you away from us. For believing Ruby. For trusting William. For fighting." She reached over and took my hand. "You saved my life." I squeezed her fingers. "You're my daughter. I'd do it 1,000 times over." "I know. That's what kept me going. In that warehouse, on the worst days, I'd think about you and Daddy, about how you never gave up on anything in your lives. I'd think, if Mama knew I was alive, she'd find me, and you did." We both had tears in our eyes. "I just wish your Daddy was here to see this," I said, "to know you're alive, to hold Aaliyah again." "Me too," Deandra wiped her face. "But Mama, I think he knows. I think he's watching, and I think he's proud of you." Maybe she was right. I like to think so. Inside, Aaliyah called out, "Grandma, Mama, dinner's ready." Deandra and I stood up. At the door, she paused and hugged me. A real hug, tight and long. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, baby girl." We went inside together. My name is Bessie Joy Thompson. I'm 68 years old now. People ask me sometimes what I learned from all of this, from losing 4 years, from being lied to, from almost losing my daughter forever. I learned this. At 68, I learned that love is stronger than any lie. That family is worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. That an old woman who never worked and who everyone underestimated could take down a criminal conspiracy and bring her daughter home. I learned that grief is real and powerful, but so is hope. I learned that you should never, ever stop asking questions. Never stop pushing for the truth. Never accept that's just how it is when your heart tells you something is wrong. And I learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't revenge. It's sitting on your porch on a summer evening, listening to your daughter and granddaughter laugh in the kitchen, knowing that tomorrow you'll all wake up together under the same roof. That's peace. That's justice. That's enough. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, unlawful confinement, or elder financial exploitation, please reach out. You are not alone. Help is available. National Domestic Violence. Hotline 1-800-799-7233. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. 1-800-THE. Lost Adult Protective Services. Contact your local agency. Your story matters. Your safety matters. Don't give up. This story is dedicated to every mother who's ever been told to stop asking questions, to every grandmother who's been pushed aside, and to every survivor who found the strength to keep fighting. Thank you for listening to Mine.